Alright guys, welcome back. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to apply the concepts that we learned in the last video to a practical use here in our page. So let's say we wanted to have a user menu up here. Let's say logged in as and then the username, but then they should be able to drop it down to access my profile, my account, settings, and log out, maybe messages as well. So how we're going to do that is in our index page here, we need to write a bit of code. Hopefully you guys have been playing around with some HTML on your own. This is all things that we've learned. So I'm going to go ahead and create a UL with a class of profile menu. And the first item in it is going to be an LI. And it's going to be an A element with an href of a hashtag. And let's go ahead and say logged in as, that looks like a username. And I'm going to give this A link a class of profile menu trigger. That looks about right. So I'm going to save this. We're going to need to style it up a bit, obviously. This still has all the styles from before. Let me get rid of most of them. Save it and refresh. Okay, that looks a bit better. So now I'm going to be playing around in the console here to style this. So I'm going to make the profile menu itself list style is going to be none. Let's say display. Let's just make it float right, and then put some margin. And is that okay? So the site title needs to go display inline block. So we have the site title in here? No, okay. Site title gets display block. And the profile menu is going to get list style none and float right. I'm going to save this and refresh just to make sure everything that we've done so far. Oh, that's an ID. It's an ID of site title, not a class. Save it and refresh. Oh, did I set that to display block? Oh, inline block, there. There we go, that looks a little better. Now I'm going to position this a bit. So we're going to move this, let's say margin top is going to be 5 pixels. 25, that looks about right. And then margin right is going to be 20 pixels. I actually need to make this 30 pixels, I think. Yeah, that looks as close as I'm going to get. So I'm going to copy all these rules and just replace what I have so far in the profile menu. Save it and refresh. There we go. Now when I click this, what we need to have happen is a drop-down menu will appear. And so how we're going to do that is within the first LI here, we're going to open it up further, and I'm going to put a sub-menu. So UL class profile submenu. And then down here, this is going to be the list that drops down. So what we're going to do is we're not going to we're going to make this work for any drop down that we have, not just the profile menu. So we're going to have to do things in a logical way. So in the A element here, I'm just going to add drop down trigger. Now we haven't talked about data attributes yet, so Let's do that actually, because it's not really a class. It has nothing to do with style sheet, and classes typically relate to that. So what we're going to do is, within any element in HTML, you can add a data attribute. And what that is just type data dash and then whatever attribute you want to add. So for instance, this would be trigger. I'm going to set that to Dropdown. So now, if we target this, we should be able to get up to the parent element, the li, and then find the submenu in it, and then, make that appear. So I'm going to go ahead and add some links, which will go nowhere. So this is going to be my account. And profile. Here's something interesting that I learned about JetBrains IDEs that I didn't know before, and so it's really neat if you guys are using it as well. And maybe other code editors have a similar function, but basically you're in the middle of a line, right? And say you want to just jump down and create a new line without having to key over to the end or use the mouse. You just hold Shift Enter, and it will leave the rest of the line as is and just drop down to a new line. So that was really cool when I found that out, because that saves a lot of time there. Settings, and one more, which is going to be log out. So I'm going to save this now. I'm going to refresh. And this looks kind of messed up. So before we even need the, before we add the event handling, I'm going to style this. Okay, we're going to make this look nice. So right off the bat, we set list style to none, and I'm going to put padding around it of 20 pixels. Actually, that's not true. None. I'm going to put a border on it. So border is going to be 1 pixel solid, and it's going to be a light gray. A slightly darker gray. Let's go with A. And then I'm going to set the background to white. And I'm going to put margin top on it. So that it appears right here on the bottom border of the site header. So that looks a bit better. I'm going to also add some box shadow to give it the illusion that it is being lifted off of the page. So I'm going to say 2 pixels, 2 pixels, 2 pixels. And we're going to definitely fix this. 5. Let's go with 15. That looks a little better. And I'm going to set RGBA to 000.3. There, it gives it a lighter shade. So I'm going to go ahead and copy all of these rules, and I believe we gave that the let's give it a generic class as well, submenu. And then I'm going to jump over to my style sheet, and submenu is always going to be styled as this. So then we can add this class to any other submenus that we have when we're making other dropdowns. So now within the submenu, I want each link to look pretty. So here's something that I've discovered within my own career as a programmer. And so when you make a dropdown like this, the default styling of links never work. Basically in CSS and HTML, the default styling for anything will most likely never work. So instead of styling the li item, which is a block element, I'm going to style this one. And here's a really simple way to make any drop-down menu look good. First of all, remove the text decoration. And now at this point, we're going to add padding, and my padding is going to be 5 pixels above and below and 10 pixels left and right. Now we need to say display block. You know what, let's put 30 pixels left and right. Seriously, that's gonna make it look a lot nicer. Actually, you know what? No, let's keep it 10 so that it's just, where is that? Right there, like that. because we're going to make the entire drop-down menu wider. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and save this by copying this. We're going to change the color. Well, let's do that now as well. Color is going to be almost a black. The text shadow, I think there's text shadow on that for some reason. Yeah, all right. And font weight should be 600 if we have it. Is that just me, or does my anti-aliasing look weird? Did I screw around with the letter spacing and stuff? All right, that will have to do. So I'm going to copy all these rules, and that applies to submenu A elements. So submenu A. This is going to find any A element within the submenu, and it's going to apply these rules. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to add a width to the submenu. So width is going to be 300 pixels. Save it, refresh. That looks a little better. This looks more like a menu that I would want to use. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm also going to set this submenu to the position to absolute. I'm going to set the right to 10 pixels. And the reason I do this is so that this element here can stay at the top where it's supposed to be exactly. And then this element right here can be manually positioned after this point. So we're going to put it, make sure the entire thing is visible on the screen. So there we go. And one final thing, when you hover over these links, there's going to be a slight change. So the background is going to go gray. So in the style sheet here, we target submenu A hover. So the background to a shade of E. Going to save this and refresh, and now we have what looks to be a real drop-down menu. So that's awesome. So what we want to happen is when we hover over this and then go into here, this will appear. So there's going to be a key issue with this, and I'm going to show you guys exactly what that issue is. I might have to make this this itself a bit bigger. So actually, no, that should work because we got margin on the top of that, right? So both elements touch. So what's going to happen is we're going to hover over this, and then it's going to make the drop-down menu appear. And then when we hover out of this or this, we want the menu to disappear. So if the mouse leaves this link to go down into the menu, we don't want the menu to disappear. And so this is something that is kind of an issue, and we're going to get to it right now. So let's go ahead, and the data trigger is dropdown. So to target an element by an attribute in jQuery, you're going to write, let's open up the $ and the brackets. We're going to put 2 square brackets in the quotations, okay? So this is part of the targeting string. And then we say data trigger equals, and then the double quotes, drop down. So you could also target by href or source, or any attribute in HTML can be targeted by using these square brackets. It's important to note that if you're using single quotes around the entire trigger, then you need to use double quotes within the trigger. So what we're going to do is mouse on mouse enter. We're going to run a function. And the function is going to be making this appear. So before we even do that, I need to make the submenu display none. So I'm going to refresh. There we go. And then in the JavaScript, we want that to appear. So there's a few ways that we can do this. We could either add a class to the submenu that makes it show. So let's do that one first. In style.css, I'm going to say submenu.active display is going to be block. All right, so we're going to save it. And then in JavaScript, what we can do is we can add a class to any element by targeting the element and then saying add class. So this is the event trigger, okay? As soon as the mouse enters this drop down, this is going to run. So what we can do is, since this is the target, we can access that within the callback function, within this function right here, by writing this. So kind of like a class, but it needs to be converted into a jQuery object, and that's why we're wrapping it with the $sign. So if we look at the structure here, this is the link, and we need to be able to access this. So there's a few ways to do this, and we're going to use the easiest way first. We're going to say parent, so then this becomes the target, and then we're going to say find the submenu, so then this becomes the target. So I'm going to create a variable here called submenu, and it's going to equal this, so it's the drop-down trigger dot parent, which then goes up to the list item or the li element, and then within this li element there's a submenu. So then we can call a function called find, and you just pass in a target. So submenu. Now at this point, what happens is this, right? So when we say this, it means the drop-down trigger. So we say parent find submenu. So then this becomes the target here, and this is what we need to make show. So to this, we're going to add a class. So there's another jQuery function that we're going to run. So we're going to say submenu dot add class active, and this is going to add the class active to this UL element. Now there's something that we need to talk about. Since this right here, since the submenu variable is already a jQuery object, you do not need to use a $sign and brackets when you're using it here. You just need to use the variable itself. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to refresh. Now what happens is when we mouse over here, the drop-down menu appears, which is exactly what we want to have happen, except there's no way to make it disappear. So what we have to do is create another event handler, and this is going to be mouse leave. However, the trigger is going to be a little bit more complicated. And that's because we need to target two elements. So from here, we're going to put the new event handler inside of this one, because once this has the class active, then we need to handle the mouse out. So the mouse could be here or here. So if you mouse out of this or if you mouse out of this. So how we're going to do that is we're going to say, well, first I'm going to show you what does work but needs a bit of tweaking so that you guys can understand exactly what we're doing here. So I'm going to say this on mouse leave, and then the second parameter again is going to be a function. And here we're just going to remove the class active. So var submenu, actually we've already declared that. Can we use that in here? There is scoping, which we haven't discussed, and I don't recall in jQuery if there's anything specific. All right, cool. So yeah, since this is declared up here, we can use it within this other callback here. In not to confuse things, but in C++, that's kind of difficult when you're connecting signals and slots and stuff. Essentially, when you're event handling in C++, it doesn't work like that, which is completely irrelevant. So just know that in here, as long as a variable has been declared above your code or at some point before your code is run, then you can use it. So what we're going to do is we're going to say submenu remove class active. So these, the add class and the remove class just take a one parameter, and that is the string representation of the class that you want to add. So I'm going to save this and I'm going to refresh, and what happens is that we get a toggleable menu. But what happens is when I hover over this, if I want to go access the menu, it disappears and I can't reach it. So what we say is if it's not entering the menu, then run that code. And how we're going to do that is if, one sec. Let me think through this a sec. There's a very specific way I wanted to do this, and I don't recall what it was. Hmm. This is going to be a bit different from, I think, how I wanted to do it, but let's do this anyway. If this mouse enter submenu else remove it. Save it. Refresh. Now we have our menu, but it's not working at all. So, one sec. Okay, what I'm going to do is, it's very early, I haven't had all my coffee right now. We're going to end the video at this, okay? So just ignore this part right here. We're going to be fixing this up in the next video. I need a few minutes to think about it, so.